All right, I want you to picture this. As many centuries ago, most of you were not alive at that point. There it is. I took a tactical sip. I knew somebody was going to jump in, and I should have known it would be you. Good job, Mary. It is a time of... The Christian message has been around for a couple centuries, but it's definitely not... It's known, but it's small. It's dispersed. It's received several generations here and there. It's been persecuted. It's been scapegoated for a whole variety of issues. If there's a plague, they're like, oh, it was those Christians' fault. Or when Rome burned, Nero said it was the Christians' fault and stuff like that. And because they're not powerful and because nobody really likes them, they'd be strung up for a while. People would feel better and they'd move on. But for the most part, it was indifferent. You were indifferent. But now the emperor, the leader of the Roman Empire, has decided that Christianity helped him win very key battles. Therefore, it's okay to be Christian now. And so he wants to bring together sort of a council to sort of agree on what are we going to do going forward for some of our contentious issues. Because there's enough Christians there now and more people are joining the church that we want to make sure we're kind of walking together. You don't want to have a bunch of chaos in the empire. So the Roman emperor, Constantine, brings a bunch of people together in a place called Nicaea. And they talk about what the church is going to do. And all the big fancy leaders get to go there for a while. And they come up with a bunch of decisions. They move forward. What is essential? What can we just sort of leave up? What's regional, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But during all this time, and right before Constantine, there was a flare-up of persecution. And when I say persecution, it was this idea that if you were a Christian, they would question how loyal you were to the empire. And so there's all these loyalty tests that the various Christians did not think was good, was putting Caesar before Jesus. And so it was as simple as like lighting a candle, here's some sand, throw it over the candle and say, Caesar is Lord. That's your loyalty test. Then you get like a little certificate. So if anybody else came by and pulled you out, theoretically you could show them this like little tag and then you would be safe. It was very chaotic. It was very scary. People were being attacked. Citizens were being attacked very, very randomly, and they were being imprisoned, and they were being killed. Now, we can't possibly understand what that looks like nowadays. Sadly, humans go as humans go, and authoritarian regimes do what authoritarian regimes do. And so part of this was, how do we move forward together now that this stuff is over, now that this stuff is behind us, now that this season of terror has been completed? Well, in the council, you're going to have people who were literally missing an eye, missing a hand, bearing the scars of torture and imprisonment because they refused to give up. They were champions of the faith. They had survived, but they were scarred. And they were there, and there's a sense that because they had done that, their testimony was stronger than those who had just done it to save themselves and then kind of come back into the church. And this was a debate. If there's somebody that buckled under pressure, do we allow them back now? Do we allow them back at a lower scale? Do they have to do penance or something along those lines? Did they earn themselves back up? Still others were clever and they found neighbors that'd be willing to do it that would sell them their certificates. So their neighbor would do it. They didn't technically do it, but now there's no point in getting arrested and tortured. So they would buy, and then if they got pulled over, they could just show the thing and they'd be fine. What about those people? So are they the ones who suffered and survived the best? The ones who kind of cleverly bought their way out, kind of the middle? And then the ones who betrayed and asked for forgiveness and were brought back in, are they kind of the lowest? These were discussions and debates, and things broke off in this area. And that turned into something else, because those who would not accept the teachings of the scarred ones, the ones who were kind of considered really, really important, the leaders whose wisdom was really venerated, those who were not sure how to go into that, they started to become known as heretics. They started to be known as those who were now outside the communion of the church. Later on, we would call that excommunication. And then the question became this. Well, if they were an influential church leader, think about all the baptisms they did. Now, what do we do with those baptisms? And this is the social political backdrop for what do we do if you're baptized by someone who's revealed to be a bad Christian, not Christian, anti-Christian, heretical. And at the heart of that is wherein lies the power of baptism? It's so central to all Christian teachings has been Jesus himself underwent baptism. And so this was not just an academic debate. Maybe in the 21st century in Canada, we think, oh, baptism is good and we can do it and whatnot, but maybe we don't give it the same gravitas. But at this time, and for a lot of Christians presently, this is really, really important. Because the question basically comes down, is it the water? Does the water become, and forgive me for this term, magical or specially sacred, holy water? In which case, should we use Brita filters or any other filters? How do we do this? In the great book, Angela's Ashes, after her son goes for his first communion at 13, and he has the wafer and he has the wine, it's his first communion, he's baptized, he's been confirmed, he goes home and they have a big party to celebrate, he eats too much, and he throws up in the backyard. And his mother, in a tizzy, reaches out to the priest. The priest's like, what? He's so bored. Like by Sunday, he's down, he's relaxed, he's a little warm. And she's like, he threw up in the backyard. He's like, okay. And she's like, how do I clean it up? Because it's the body and blood of Christ. Like, he just threw up the body and blood of Christ into my backyard. Do I need to use holy water? And he was just like, use a hose. Like that's it. You see, like, this is part of our belief. Like, this isn't just food that a sick kid threw up. This contains the sacred and real body and blood of Christ. So what happens to the water in baptism? Is it the person doing it? You need to be blessed by someone who genuinely follows Jesus. And there's power there. Is it in the person being baptized? Well, not always. Sometimes people do it for all sorts of wrong reasons. We do it for babies that have no possible option of choosing yes or no. So wherein lies the power of baptism? And these were some of the debates. And it'd be great, and you're like, okay, so where does it lie? And I could do that, and I've thought of doing that, but I wouldn't be representing all Christian people. What we could say as a sort of general rule, what we could say as in what Paul writes to the Corinthians, as baptism and communion, which we're about to participate in our lives, and everything we're trying to do, all the good deeds we're trying to do, all the mistakes we make along the way, what Paul is saying in Corinthians and what has made the good news of Jesus so important is that through all these things, the power has and will always reside in God. Everything we receive is a gift. I know what I believe happens in baptism. I know it's important, but there's also a sense, not in an intellectual sense, but there's also a sense in faith. Sometimes you do it out of faith. And that can be really tricky. You're like, oh, were you getting into some magic water? You're like, no, but maybe a little bit. One of the great things we can say when we're trying to describe our faith to those, as Paul says, and be fine with the fact that some people will shake their head like, I don't get it. That's fine. Not your job to change anybody's mind. It's your job to sort of walk with Christ and see what happens and talk to people along the way and show them the love of Christ. But one of the great things to be able to say about your Christian faith is like, I don't know, but maybe this thing is wonderful. Maybe this thing is magical. Maybe this thing is just huge and intimate. Maybe it's so far beyond description that we're just kind of describing shadows. But what some at this crisis would come down with, and a good way to sort of walk forward, is that if the person who baptized you ends up being just the Antichrist himself, I think we all agree the Antichrist is going to be a guy, right? Right? Yeah. Eagerly nodding along. All right. What was basically decided was if someone who is revealed later to be just an absolute monster of a human being, that does not negate your baptism. Because it's never been about the human doing the baptism. The human doing the baptism is just an instrument, just someone to be there. It's always about Creator and creation. It's about the willingness to enter into the water to symbolize, I was going this way, and now I symbolically enter this tomb, and I come back up to walk now as a resurrected child of Christ, believing that as he was raised from the dead, so too will I. And I will walk and be a disciple of his for as long as I am here. And the other person there, in some ways, is very much like the Roman centurions, the guards who crucified Jesus. They were essential, but they weren't the point. The person doing the baptism is essential, but they're not the point. And so what they go in their life has no bearing ultimately on the spiritual significance of what it is you do. And so, as always, baptism, like communion, like how we do everything, is in a relationship between ourselves and our Creator. And now we're left with the question, am I pretty cool because I listen to my Creator? Is there something special and holy and sacred about me? Is God asking this of everybody, or did he just tap my shoulder and therefore I can quietly be like, I'm a little bit better than you? Well, that's what we'll be talking about a few weeks from now. Amen, amen, amen.